Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Saajhi Samajh 12. I am Nidhi Gupta, your host for the event. Saajhi Samajh, when translated in English, means shared understanding. It's worth noting that this edition holds special significance as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Saajhi Samajh. Back in 2014, we embarked on this journey with the inaugural edition of Saajhi Samajh, focusing on evidence-based experiences in school enrichment programs of government schools. A recent report by Deloitte on the women in the workforce is a comprehensive examination of the roles and challenges faced by women in today's professional landscape. It touches upon the various aspects impacting women's participation and advancement in the professional sphere, ranging from gender disparities at work, unequal distribution of household responsibilities, personal safety, and the potential economic benefits of gender equality in the workplace. Aligned with the ethos, Tech Mahindra Foundation presents the 12th edition of Saajhi Samajh, focusing on women on the rise, challenges, opportunities, and pathways. Before we embark on this stimulating discussion awaiting us, I would like to outline a few ground rules for today's online event. Your mic, video, and chat box are auto disabled. If you wish to contribute to the ongoing discussion or ask questions, please communicate through the Q&A section. For better viewing experience, click on View in the Zoom app, then click on the Speaker view. You can also choose to hide the non-video participants. I would also like to welcome our sign language interpreters for the event, Mr. Sundar Raju from Deaf Enable Foundation and Mr. W from Sign Swayam Society. I would now like to invite Shotru Chaudhary, Head Learning and Development at Tech Mahindra Foundation, to give a glimpse of all the exciting work that we do at the foundation. Over to you, Shotru.
Nidhi. A very good morning to our guests of honor, our heroes from the ground, the lovely audience, and my dear colleagues. Since 2006, Tech Mahindra Foundation has been working in the domain of empowerment, education, and employability with a vision of empowerment through education. We are currently working across 11 cities with more than 90 partners and more than 150 projects and touching lives of students, youth, parents, and communities. In our education domain, we are working across two projects, Arise, all-round improvement in school education, and our flagship teacher training program, Shikshantar, through which we are trying to empower teachers, work with students to improve their learning levels, work closely with school leaders and principals, and ensure that the parents and the community comes together for their child's education. Under the employability vertical, we have our flagship skill development program called SMART, which is skills for market training, wherein we are working with youth from the underserved areas and communities to ensure that they get into a formal sector job. And thus, we bridge the gap between the people who are not getting employment and the supply of the skilled workforce. In employability, we are working through partner organizations in smart centers and also directly through our smart academies. Along with our programs, we also work with persons with disabilities and women. As per our mandate, at least 10% of our beneficiaries should be persons with disabilities and at least 50% are women. And this number is supposed to go even further up from this year onwards. Through all these programs, we are working with more than 60,000 teachers, with impacting more than 2.5 lakh children, impacting more than 2.3 lakh youth, and working with more than 70,000 disabled students. Thank you for giving a patient ear to what Tech Mahindra Foundation is doing in the social development space. With this, I hand it over to our host for the day, Nidhi.
Thank you, Shotru, for taking us through the initiatives undertaken by Tech Mahindra Foundation in the realms of education, employability, and disability. For our next segment, I would like to invite Mr. Chetan Kapoor, CEO, Tech Mahindra Foundation. Chetan is an industry stalwart with over 2 decades of experience in the development sector. Having completed his MBA from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade in 1995, it took a while before he crossed his paths with the development sector. Having started in 2001, Chetan has been in the sector for 2 decades and currently heads Tech Mahindra Foundation as CEO. Passing the baton to Chetan for an insightful discussion with our esteemed chief guest for today's event. Over to you, Chetan.
Thanks a lot, Nidhi. Before I start, can somebody from the team, because I know that Shikha ji has joined, but she will need to be made a co-host. So Naima, if I can request you to please reach out to her right away and help her come on board.
Sure, yes.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. Delighted to be with all of you for this edition of the Saajhi Samajh series, Tech Mahindra Foundation's attempt to put the spotlight on issues that concern us, sometimes at an individual level, but often at a societal level. In the past, we have dwelled on topics such as cyber safety in the cyberspace, women in STEM, and empowering caregivers of persons with disabilities, topics that are not often talked about in such forums. However, this time we have chosen a topic that is not new, has been discussed quite a few times, and yet is so significant and central to our lives that its import can perhaps never be overstated: the role of women in contributing to economic growth of our nation. The seemingly straightforward issue is actually fraught with complexities and can be viewed through multiple lenses: historical, societal, biological, and political. Whatever the factors are, the fact remains that the Global Gender Gap Report 2023 of the World Economic Forum placed India at an overall rank of 127 out of 146 countries, and that when it comes to labor force participation of women, we are at a mere 31.6% compared to 77.4% for men, as per Government of India statistics for 22-23. Through its work in employability, TMF is committed to the idea of women's economic empowerment, a cause that we, as part of the Mahindra Group, are resolutely working towards. This Saajhi Samajh is a step in that direction, and I'm honored and delighted to invite to this forum someone who has left an indelible mark on the corporate firmament as one of the most outstanding business leaders of our times, Ms. Shikha Sharma, the former Managing Director and CEO of Axis Bank, the third largest private bank in India. During her 9 years at the helm of Axis Bank, she has transformed the bank into a digital leader in mobile banking and digital payments. Earlier, she has worked for almost 30 years with ICICI across its bank and insurance companies. Among a much longer list of accolades, Shikha has been featured in the Fortune Global and India list of 50 most powerful women in business, India's best woman CEO by Business Today, Businesswoman of the Year at the Economic Times Awards, and Forbes list of Asia's 50 power businesswomen. She now serves as an independent director on the board of Mahindra & Mahindra and is also a board member at Tech Mahindra Limited. Shikha, thank you very much for taking out the time to join us today. It is indeed a privilege to have you with us and a matter of immense honor for me to be having this conversation with you today.
No, thank you, Chetan. You're being very kind. I'm actually really excited to be here. I've seen some of the work that you're doing at the foundation, And I'm only humbled by looking at the impact that your work is having. And I think it's a great opportunity for me to meet um, all the people here today on this call. And I thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's just dive into the Q&A session with your permission, Shikha. So
Yes.
you've had an illustrious career in a domain that has traditionally been considered a male bastion. So to get things started, it'll be great to hear from you about the initial phase of your journey, the first 10 years or so, and the challenges that you had to face and your key learnings from that phase.
So, Chetan, frankly, the way my career shaped up, my first 10 years, I was very lucky to start my career with ICICI, which was very welcoming of women employees. And we actually never were discriminated based on gender in any way. I actually faced a little bit of gender pushback later in my career when I went to work in the joint venture with ICICI Prudential, or even the joint venture in investment banking with JP Morgan, and then went to Axis Bank, because that's when I came across cultures which were less comfortable with seeing women as equal partners at the workplace. And there was just a predominance of male leaders. So, so I was in a very severe minority. And what happens then is, as you know, if I just take the example of ICICI Prudential, when I would go for Prudential meetings, I would be the only woman CEO in that group. And a lot of them were American males, but there were also Asian males. They all loved golf. Their eating and drinking patterns were different from mine. So they loved their steak and drink, and I didn't like steak and I don't drink. So becoming part of the social milieu was a big challenge. And what happens is, when you're not a natural part of the social milieu, you feel like you're missing out on the conversations. You you don't become part of the informal network and conversation, so you get left out. And therefore, you have to find another way of creating the networks, because one of the things we all have to learn is the importance of working with other colleagues and partners. Nothing gets done by yourself. And today's world is just a much more complex world. So the ability to partner and work becomes so much more important. I mean, you're doing that in the foundation in a big way by partnering with so many people who get the impact across, right? But even within an organization, unless you learn to respect your team members and work with them, you can't really have any impact or make anything happen. And therefore, if you're not a part of the natural social network, it becomes important that you create ways of being part of the people in your own way. That doesn't mean that I have to start drinking. That doesn't mean I have to start having steak. That doesn't mean I have to go and play golf. But is there another common ground that I can find? So, if we find that we are running businesses and all of us are having some problems dealing with employee retention or some particular part of technology, then you might find common work themes that that are interesting to everybody, and you engage on that. But it becomes important to, first of all, get rid of your mind block of feeling left out, and then creating formats in which you can integrate into the network. I think that, to me, was the bigger challenge when I became part of, whether it was the JP Morgan joint venture or the ICICI Prudential joint venture.
Thank you. Yes, I think it resonates with some of the experience that I too have had. And I think this transcends, because it's not just the banking sector. I think we see certain paradigms repeating across sectors. So let me now put the focus on the sector that Tech Mahindra Foundation is, sort of most aligned to. And as you're aware, we are working with young men and women who come from the relatively underserved backgrounds. And so for this question, I have in mind all the practitioners in the social development sector who are working on the theme of economic empowerment of women. Now, we often encounter real practical issues that sometimes prevent women from taking a more active role at the workplace. These could be societal norms and pressures, health issues within the household, the fact that women are traditionally seen as caregivers, and therefore that sometimes becomes an impediment, and of course, parental concerns around safety, etc. So, what are some of the ways in which we can address or counter these kind of challenges?
So, I mean, depending upon the society and the area that you're working in, the challenges are obviously very, very different. So, if I just give you an example from the Axis Bank days, then I want to give you one example around Axis Bank and its employees, and another example from one of the NGO programs that we ran in Rajasthan. So, in Axis Bank, as I said, I was very fortunate to have started with ICICI as my first employer, where I did not experience any gender discrimination. When I came to Axis Bank, I came as the CEO, so I did not face gender discrimination. But when I went out and had meetings with the branches and the branch managers, I found that there was a mindset block there, where managers felt that they would rather not have women leading branches because they were going to have babies and they need to take care of their home, and so they would not be able to fulfill their responsibility as a branch manager. And what would happen therefore is that while we would get women to join the bank, very few of them would make it to branch manager, and so therefore at that point many of them would leave. And I was actually, in a way, I think it was good for me that I had come from this different environment. So when I found the data and I asked the question, and people came back and said, "Oh, the woman is not the primary bread earner, so it's okay. We'd rather give an opportunity to the man rather than the woman, or she's going to go away on leave, so I don't want to put in a responsible position." And I actually used the town halls to counter that question and say that, look, that's probably the wrong approach. And we need to give opportunities for women, because if you have to give it a try. If it doesn't work, you can always fall back. But not giving the opportunity is not the way to go. And I think the good news was that I did see many more women rise up through the ranks. And similarly, in the head office itself, I would find that a woman would go on maternity leave. And when she came back, people would say, "Oh, now we need to give her a soft assignment because she's not going to be able to put in the same hours." So actually, the manager thought they were being kind to this lady who's coming back, but they were being unkind because they were taking away an opportunity from the woman and not giving her a choice to figure out whether she wanted to be as ambitious as all her other colleagues. So one of the things I started doing was looking at some of our talented women who went on maternity leave. And when they came back, I made sure that we gave them a challenging role. And it's interesting that, two of them, 2 years into the challenging role, came back and told me that if you hadn't given me this, I might have not been here today, because I might have just quit and said, let me be at home with the baby. But because you gave me an exciting job at the workplace, I felt it was important for me to make things work. And my family supported me in staying the course, and that helped. So I think that's one example from the workplace at Axis. The other example, which is a lot more stark in some sense for me, because I wasn't exposed to something like that, was when I visited one of our NGO programs in Rajasthan. And it was in a tribal area. And I'd gone there after 7 years of work by the NGO in that area. And I met this group of 30 women from the villages, and I spoke to them about what their journey has been. And it was interesting that 10 years ago, when the NGO first started, they went to the village and the women used to wear the gungat, and they were not allowed to go and talk to a man or even to an outsider. And from there was a journey where I was sitting with these 30 women. They were sitting, they had a point of view, and one of them, who was like the senior most leader over there, volunteered that very, I think just a couple of months before I visited, they had had a video call with the Prime Minister, who had asked for suggestions on how the government can help women. And she was one of the spokespersons for that, and she gave her, suggestions on what needed to be done. And it was such a transformation. But it was really this NGO that we had partnered with, who had through the years worked with the women, handled issues of safety that the community had, that, our women won't be taken care of, or they won't be respected. They would not let the NGO, the women who were leading the programs, to go from one place to the other, because they would worry about their leaving the village. And it just took years of mindset change in society to make that happen. But it was to be so fulfilling to see that, at the end of the day, those very same women who used to be in Gungats were going out and helping shape government policy, were helping change the way the community looked at women. So they told me about how, there were liquor shops in a lot of the villages, and the men would go and get drunk and would actually use up a lot of the income in that, and it would not be used for productive purposes. And 7-8 years into the program, the women had had the confidence to go and destroy some of these shops and, tell the men that this was not going to go on, because the women had started working and earning money, and through that, they had earned the right to have a say in their communities. So, so the big lessons to me were, there's so many barriers. There are societal mindset barriers. There are, of course, financial barriers in terms of being able to look after the house, look after the children. So there's a bunch of things where society needs to, most importantly, first change the mindset and say that our women deserve better. They deserve the same access to education. They deserve the same access to opportunity. And of course, we need to give them a safe and respecting ecosystem.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Very, very insightful. And in fact, one of our insights working in the sphere of employability is that it seems there is as much a need to work with employability, because that's where a lot of the mindset issues that you alluded to stem from. So yes, absolutely. So if I were to ask you, taking a slightly more zoom out, looking at the macro picture, with your vast experience of looking at the other parts of the globe as well, what would be your suggestions or recommendations for the policymakers that can help improve the situation?
So to be honest, I think, to be fair, the government has done a lot actually to help. So the most important thing, of course, is law and order and safety for women at the workplace. The second, I think, is infrastructure around the childbearing and childcare years. So whether it is more prevalence of childcare facilities, in India, we have the advantage of, joint families or grandparents living close by or who are willing to help out with children. But even so, women need some support during the childbearing years and the child rearing years. And therefore, I think the policy change on maternity leave, on taking leave to take care of your parents when you need to, I think those have been very good initiatives that have come up from a policy perspective. I think the other thing that works is just giving confidence and breaking the mindset for the women as well as the men. For the women, the I believe mindset is important. And so therefore recognizing role models becomes important. So that women believe they can also go and do it. Otherwise, if you don't have another person who you can look up to and say, oh, I can actually manage home and work and things will be fine, then it becomes difficult. So, so I would think that, and to that extent, I'm actually generally against quotas, but the issue of saying we should have a quota of women directors on boards, I think it's a good idea, because otherwise directors get appointed based on people who you know. It's less of a merit appointment and more of a social network appointment. And unless you put a quota, we wouldn't have seen so many women come on boards. And once they come on boards, I think they do change the tone of the conversation, and in case get more diversity of thinking. So there are benefits to it. But normally I would have said, no, don't push quotas, just make sure that everybody gets equal opportunity. But I think in this case where it's difficult to do merit-based opportunity, I think their quota has become important. Where you can go purely merit-based, I would still argue that going purely merit-based is a good idea, but it's important that our women get access to the same education opportunity and they get access to the same employment opportunities. And that is actually something you have to look at through your career. So some stuff policy can do, some stuff organizations have to do from a culture perspective. And at the same time, being sensitive to the fact that women, as I said, during childbearing, need that break and need that support.
Absolutely. So some push factors, some pull factors, I think like in most cases, that's what's required. Thank you so much. So briefly coming back to your journey now, can you share any specific initiatives or programs that you've implemented at Access to support gender inclusiveness in your company?
Actually, Chetan, I already talked about the two things that I think were most, made the most change as far as Access was concerned. One is that we openly talked about some of the mindsets which were blocking women getting the same access to opportunity. The other thing I did was, from an HR perspective, I would ask HR to look at data on seeing that if we have 30% women in the front line, then when it comes to promotion, are we seeing 30% promotions coming from women? And if not, then somebody needs to explain to us why that's not happening. So it was interesting that in the first year I asked for that data, it was very, very skewed. But, once I got that data out and I actually presented it at the senior leadership meeting to say, okay, let's look at this data and let's look at function by function, geography by geography, what the differences are, and talk about why this is happening. The first year, a lot of explanations were given, but 2 years down the line, the data had moved because people realized that the explanations were not valid explanations. They were excuses, actually, because of all of the mindset issues. But once the data came out there, then things changed. So I think that was an initiative that worked. The other thing, as I said, was, just role modeling that change by saying that I will sponsor a woman in an important job. And so, I used to have a small executive office with 2 or 3 people. And of the, I think, 3 people through my 9-year career who came and ran that office for me, 2 were women. And they were both women who had just come back from maternity leave. So when you put a woman in a position like that, then you're actually signaling to the organization certain signals, and people watch and learn from that. So I think it was a bit of open communication, some looking at data, and some role modeling.
Terrific. Yes. So walk the talk. Absolutely. That's the way that we have to do it. So thank you. And finally now, you've already answered part of my next question, but specifically one question is addressed towards the role of men in the lives of our women. So what would be your message to them? Because we know that sometimes that becomes a stumbling block. So this is the final question.
Yeah, so as I said, I talked about that and you picked it up very quickly in terms of having to change the mindsets from an employer perspective and say that women need to be given equal opportunity. At the same time, I think we have to be cognizant of two issues, that where women are different is our society has certain challenges as far as women are concerned in terms of the hours that they can work, etc. And there are different solutions that people come up with. Either you say that, okay, if I'm employing women, they have to, they have to work hours where they can leave at 5 p.m. and they can get home during the sunlight hours, or else you provide infrastructure to make sure they reach home safely. So, where it's possible, provide transport which is safe. Um, I know that actually one of the Mahindra companies itself has done a lot in terms of allowing women to travel into remote locations, because they just make sure that they take care of their safety and security. So I think if men are made conscious that that is where women are different, they're not different in terms of being less able or less competitive or less ambitious. No, please treat them as being the same and give them the same opportunity. But where they do need a difference is, one, as I said, from a safety perspective, and two is, when a woman is going through childbearing, then she needs, those couple of months, or maybe she needs to take leave. Maybe you want to encourage some of your experienced talent to get some flexi time. And if it may not be possible in all roles, but wherever there are roles where you can give women flexi time during those years, then that can help retain some of your top talent. And actually, that's another thing that I had tried in one of my earlier organizations, that if there was a really talented woman who went on maternity leave and she was having challenges coming back even after maternity leave, we did try and find roles where they could work from home for a couple of years. And then, the interesting thing was many of them came back and finally joined formally. So I think just being sensitive to those two needs can go a long way.
Absolutely. And I know that, we had actually invited a number of our employers, those who recruit from the smart centers that Tech Mahindra Foundation runs. And I hope some of them are listening to this, because some of these companies, and, I would not want to toot our own horn here, but definitely Mahindra and Mahindra also has been at the forefront in terms of bringing in policies. They recently rolled out a 5-year plan, which supports maternity. So I think some of these path-breaking ideas that are required, need to come in and flow across, because it's especially in the smaller towns where we see, more and greater challenges. Even in our own data around employability reveals that there is a difference when we look at data from, let's say, Bangalore versus, let's say, Bhubaneswar. So I think that's where some of these changes need to come in. So thank you so much, Shikha. This has been extremely, extremely enriching for all of us. And I know we've exceeded the time that was allotted, but I think it's been all the way worth it. So thank you so much. Back to you,
Thank you,
Nidhi.
Chetan, for inviting me.
Please stay on, because we have the launch of the curriculum after this.
Thank you, Chetan sir and Shikha ma'am, for this insightful discussion. The few key takeaways I would like to highlight here are that before anyone else, women themselves need to get rid of their own mind block of being left out. As an organization, it has to be a very conscious decision that women's ambition are not undermined based on their gender, and breaking the stereotypical mindset for women and men. Both is the starting point for ensuring equal opportunities for women at the workplace. In line with this, may I now request Mr. Chetan Kapoor and Ms. Shikha Sharma to officially launch the Gender Ed curriculum developed by Tech Mahindra Foundation. Over to you, Chetan sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nidhi. I'm thrilled to announce a significant step forward in our commitment to diversity and inclusion and gender equity, the Gender Ed curriculum. May I please invite Shikha to do the honors and launch the Gender Ed curriculum? A few words from you, Shikha.
Thank you, Chetan, for inviting me to this really insightful launch. I think it just shows that you have a great understanding of what needs to be done from the perspective of creating ecosystem support and mindset change for everybody to be more sensitive to gender differences, gender needs, not just gender differences, but also I saw in the curriculum you're looking at different orientations as well, and saying we have to be sensitive to whether it's somebody who has a different sexual orientation or a disability. So I'm glad that you're trying to make this curriculum out to people, because not only will it help change corporate culture, I think when these people go back home and go back to their societies and start to talk about it, it'll probably help to build better societies. And I know that's exactly what the Mahindra Foundation is trying to do. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So yes, the curriculum is designed to educate and empower individuals on the nuances of gender stereotypes and biases, with the aim of dismantling some outdated societal norms and creating a truly inclusive workplace culture. You can get a glimpse of what this curriculum contains. It has 6 comprehensive modules, as you can see there, spread across 10 hours. And the participants are going to gain a deeper understanding of the concept of gender and how it intersects with other aspects of identity, such as race, ethnicity, sexuality, disability, and socioeconomic background. In this, we are actually thankful to an agency called iWage, which is the Institute for What Works to Advance Gender Equality, which has contributed to the development of this curriculum. And our commitment doesn't stop at our own doors. While we've already started the rollout of this curriculum amongst our own projects and beneficiary segments, but after today's launch, we are extending an open invitation to any organization or individual who shares our vision of gender equality and wishes to utilize our gender ed curriculum as an e-course or a training resource. So together, we can drive meaningful change and create a more inclusive society for future generations. With this, we come to an end to this segment of Saajhi Samajh. Thank you once again, Shikha. I think it's just been brilliant having you with us and share your views on this extremely important topic of women on the rise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shikha ma'am. Thank you, Chetan sir. Our next segment is a mix of both excitement and nostalgia for us. The vision and mission of Tech Mahindra Foundation clearly outlines empowerment of girls and women as its key focus area and has always worked with the mandate of having 50% women beneficiaries. In this segment, my colleague Chavi Bhardwaj will be in conversation with 3 such wonderful women and delve deeper into their professional and personal journeys. Chavi is currently the manager in the Learning and Development team of Tech Mahindra Foundation and has been associated with us since 2020. She is also a Teach for India Fellow. Handing it over to Chavi from here.
Thank you, Nidhi, and a very good morning to everyone. I am Chavi and I will be moderating this part of the discussion. When striving for a more equitable world, economic empowerment, and inclusive societies, it is crucial to acknowledge the real heroes from the ground. In our work with women and youth, we regularly encounter women who take initiative, break societal barriers, and embrace non-traditional roles. With unwavering spirit and courage, these women are inspiring role models for many. Among the many success stories, we have Vanamali, an alumna of our Digital Smart Academy, who completed her digital marketing course and with her passion and determination secured a job in Dubai where she now happily resides. Nayana and Chandini have embraced the challenge of working in the traditionally male-dominated sector, the automobile industry. They are now thriving in their respective roles at MTech Technology and Yokohama Tires. Today, we are honored to introduce 3 women from our ecosystem who personify the real meaning of empowerment. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to Komal, a former student of our Sophia Smart Center in Delhi. Immediately after her education, she got married, and despite facing challenges, she was determined to continue her career. She completed her customer relationship and sales course from the Smart Center and is now working as a data entry operator at Lakshmi Ice Cream Private Limited. We have Ms. Kajal, who belongs to the Ganjam district of Odisha. With the support from her guru, she was able to choose her livelihood path and received beauty and wellness training from our Smart Center Ruchika in Bhubaneswar. Today, she successfully runs her own beauty parlor and serves as a role model for other individuals in her community. We would like to welcome Ms. Pallavi from Tech Mahindra Foundation. Pallavi did not have many strong female role models in her life besides her mother, but her perspective changed after joining the foundation. This is her first organization and she strongly believes in advocating equal opportunities for women in all fields. Welcome everyone. In the next 15 minutes, we have the opportunity to listen to the inspiring stories and experiences of these remarkable women. Hello Komal, कैसे हो आप?
Hello ma'am, I'm fine.
ओके सो कोमल, आपने अपनी एजुकेशन के बाद ब्रेक लिया आपके मैरिज एंड फैमिली रीजंस के कारण, और फिर से ऑफिस स्टार्ट करने में अक्सर महिलाओं को परेशानियां आती हैं. आपको क्या चैलेंजेस आए वर्क प्लेस दोबारा ज्वाइन करने में?
हाँ जी मैम, एक्चुअली मेरी शादी जल्दी हो गई थी. मैं एक सिंगल मदर भी हूँ. मेरा बेबी भी जल्दी हो गया था, तो मुझे ना जॉब के लिए मैंने करंटली मेरी जैसे ही एजुकेशन कंप्लीट हुई मेरी शादी हो गई. उसके बाद मैंने सिचुएशंस ऐसे क्रिएट हो गई कि मुझे जॉब की नीड होने लगी, तो मैंने सोचा कि दोबारा जॉब ज्वाइन कर लेनी चाहिए. लेकिन ईयर गैप इतना हो गया था कि मैं जॉब नहीं मुझे मिल पा रही थी. कहीं पे भी इंटरव्यू के लिए मैं जा रही थी तो सब मुझसे यही बोलते थे कि आपका ईयर गैप बहुत ज्यादा हो गया है, आपके पास अब वो वाली स्किल नहीं होगी. तो फिर मैंने अपना सोचा कि क्यों ना रीस्किल किया जाए, अपने नॉलेज को और ज्यादा इम्प्रूव किया जाए. तो फिर मैंने ना सोफिया स्मार्ट टेक महिंद्रा का वो देखा था, टेम्पलेट देखी थी. तो फिर मैंने वहां पर ज्वाइन किया टेक महिंद्रा फाउंडेशन में, सोफिया में, और CRS कोर्स ज्वाइन किया था मैम. उसके बाद मैंने लक्ष्मी आइसक्रीम प्राइवेट लिमिटेड में ज्वाइन किया डाटा एंट्री ऑपरेटर.
ओके, थैंक यू कोमल. आपका बहुत अच्छा डिसीजन था अपने आप को रीस्किल करने का, ट्रेनिंग लेने का और दोबारा से अपने करियर को स्टार्ट करने का. थैंक यू फॉर शेयरिंग. मेरा दूसरा सवाल काजल से है. हेलो काजल, कैसे हो आप?
हेलो मैम, गुड मॉर्निंग ऑल ऑफ यू.
गुड मॉर्निंग. सो काजल, आपको अपना बिजनेस शुरू करने की प्रेरणा कहाँ से मिली? और बिजनेस स्टार्ट करने के लिए हिम्मत के साथ साथ रिसोर्सेज भी चाहिए होते हैं, तो आपको क्या चैलेंजेस आए?
एक्चुअली बचपन से मेरे को ब्यूटी में इंटरेस्ट था. तो हेयर स्टाइल बनाना हो, साड़ी रैपिंग करना हो, मेहंदी लगाना और मेकअप बनाना में मेरे को इंटरेस्ट था. तो मेरे को सोसाइटी ने एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहा था और घर में भी एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहा था पापा मम्मी ने. तो मैंने सोचा कि मेरा ट्रांसजेंडर कम्युनिटी में एडमिशन हो जाओ, और ट्रांसजेंडर कम्युनिटी में जब एडमिशन हो कि भुवनेश्वर आ गई मैंने. तो मेरा ट्रांस गुरु ने मेरे को सपोर्ट की और एडवाइस दी कि टेक महिंद्रा रुचिका स्मार्ट सेंटर में ज्वाइन करने के लिए. मैं वहां से ज्वाइन करके मेरे को कॉन्फिडेंस आया. और उधर मैं थ्री ईयर से स्ट्रगल करके मैं अपना पार्लर का थोड़ा बहुत सामान खरीद के अपना बिजनेस शुरू किया था. और जब मैं शुरू किया तो मेरे को कॉन्फिडेंस आ गया वहां से. और चैलेंजेस ये है कि मेरे को सोसाइटी में जब सपोर्ट कोई नहीं कर रहा था, मेरे पास पैसा भी नहीं था. तो जब मैं ट्रांस कम्युनिटी में काम कर रहा था, वहां से थोड़ा बहुत पैसा अरेंज करके मैं अपना पार्लर के लिए थोड़ा बहुत सामान खरीद कर काम चल रहा था.
थैंक यू काजल. आपकी स्टोरी और आपकी जर्नी हम सबके लिए एक इंस्पिरेशन है. हम आपसे ये भी जानना चाहते हैं कि आपकी सबसे बड़ी सीख क्या रही, जो आप हम सबसे शेयर करना चाहोगे?
सब में सोसाइटी को ये कहना चाहूंगी कि अपने सपनों पे भरोसा रखो, खुद पर विश्वास रखो, बी कॉन्फिडेंस, तो काम चल रहेगा और सब लोग अपना काम कर पाएंगे.
थैंक यू सो मच काजल. बहुत अच्छा लगा आपको सुन के एंड थैंक यू आप हमारे साथ इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे आए. हाय पल्लवी, कैसे हो आप? आप म्यूट पे हैं पल्लवी. हाय. तो पल्लवी, सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको बोलना चाहूंगी कि आप हमारे लिए बहुत ही इंस्पिरेशनल कोलीग हैं. हम आपसे आपके बचपन से अभी तक का सफर जानना चाहते हैं. प्लीज से शेयर कीजिए.
बचपन में 2 ईयर में नॉर्मल थी. उसके बाद बुखार हो गई है. डॉक्टर ने कहा कि ये प्रॉब्लम हो गई है. मम्मी पापा की बहुत परेशान हो गई थी। पापा मम्मी को बोला कि टेंशन मत लो, शाइना पीछे क्यों कर लेना। तो मम्मा की मना किया था तो हिच भी कर सकते हैं। तो पापा के न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने में स्पीच थेरेपी का कॉन्टैक्ट मिले। स्पीच थेरेपी के पास गई है तो वहाँ मिला तो कंचन मैम ने मम्मी पापा को समझाया कि मैं मशीन पहनने के साथ ही स्पीच सीखने को चाहती है।
जी जी।
वही मैंने किया है। 10th और 12th क्लास में फर्स्ट डिवीजन मिले। बीकॉम में कंप्लीट होने के बाद चार्टर्ड अकाउंट में करने की तैयारी कर रही थी पर बहुत टफ लग गई है। मैंने सोचा कि मैं अपनी एनजीओ एंड ऑनलाइन बिजनेस बनना चाहिए थी एंड पर कैसे कैसे करना है, क्या करना है। मैंने सोचा कि छोटी छोटी जॉब कर लेती हैं फिर सीख जाऊंगी।
ओके ओके, थैंक यू पल्लवी, बहुत अच्छा लगा आपसे जान के एंड कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस। इतने चैलेंजेस के बाद भी आपके फर्स्ट डिवीजन आया, आपने चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के लिए परस्यू किया एंड आपने स्पीच थेरेपी लेके आई थिंक ये बहुत अच्छा डिसीजन किया एंड रियली ऑल द बेस्ट टू यू फॉर योर कमिंग करियर।
थैंक यू।
मेरा दूसरा कोमल, हाँ, तो मेरा नेक्स्ट सवाल कोमल से है कि कोमल आप एक सिंगल मदर भी हैं। हम आपसे जानना चाहते हैं कि आप कैसे बैलेंस करते हो अपनी घर की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज और अपने जॉब एंड करियर को।
मैम मैं अपने पेरेंट्स के साथ ही रहती हूँ। अगर वैसे मैं वर्क फ्रॉम होम करती हूँ ज़्यादा टाइम, क्योंकि मेरा जो स्टाफ है वो मेल है सारा ज़्यादातर उसमें, तो इसलिए मैंने उनसे रिक्वेस्ट की आप मुझे वर्क फ्रॉम होम दे दीजिए ताकि मैं अपने बच्चे की भी केयर कर सकूँ। वो 11 इयर्स का हो गया है तो उसका स्कूल, उसका होमवर्क, स्कूल में आजकल बच्चों की आप जानते ही हो कि कितनी परेशानी होती है बच्चों को जाने में। उसको पिक एंड ड्रॉप के लिए भी कोई ना कोई होना चाहिए अवेलेबल। तो मैं अपने वर्क के साथ उसको भी देखती हूँ और बाकी अगर जब मैं ऑफिस जाती हूँ तो फिर उस वक्त मेरी मदर हैं जो उसकी केयर कर लेती हैं। 20 डेज में अपना वर्क फ्रॉम होम करती हूँ मैम और 10 डेज में ऑफिस जाती हूँ।
थैंक यू कोमल, बहुत अच्छा लगा जान के कि आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आपको ये फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी दे रही है 20 डेज वर्क फ्रॉम होम एंड 10 डेज ऑफिस। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर शेयरिंग। पल्लवी, मेरा लास्ट सवाल आपसे है, आपकी प्रोफेशनल जर्नी को देखते हुए ऐसी कौन सी चीजें ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस कर सकती हैं जिससे कि एम्प्लॉयज को सपोर्टेड और इंक्लूडेड फील हो?
ओके मैम, हमारी प्रोफेशन क्या है, ऐसी चीज होना चाहिए कोई भी एम्प्लॉय हो जो चुनता नहीं है वो हमेशा का साइन नाइटे क्यों करती है। हमें प्रॉब्लम तो होती है एम्प्लॉय को चुनाई नहीं देता है, उनको आवाज कैसे लगाएंगे। हमें ऐसे पढ़ना चाहिए कि मशीन में दिया चाहिए और स्पीच थेरेपी करवाती थी and senior and team members are very supportive and patient with me.
Okay.
Opportunity growth and opportunity मिली है। MIS and अकाउंट में मैं काम करने में बहुत इंटरेस्ट आई है। I feel comfortable in communicating with everyone. Thank you so much.
थैंक यू पल्लवी, बहुत अच्छा लगा जान के और आपने बहुत अच्छी सजेशंस शेयर किए कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में स्पीच थेरेपी होनी चाहिए, पॉसिबल हो तो हियरिंग इक्विपमेंट प्रोवाइड करें एंड गुड टू नो दैट यू आर हैविंग अ सपोर्टिव एनवायरनमेंट एंड एनकरेजिंग कोलीग्स आपके वर्क प्लेस में। थैंक यू फॉर शेयरिंग। Thank you, Komal, Kajal, and Pallavi, for sharing your inspiring journeys with us. Your courage and resilience are truly commendable, and your stories serve as powerful reminders of how determination can overcome any barrier or stereotype. We hope that your experiences will empower and inspire women and youth everywhere. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Over to Nidhi.
Thank you, Chavi, for this insightful panel discussion. For our next segment, we have an inspiring lineup of strong and influential women sharing their perspectives on women empowerment and leadership. With us on panel are Ms. Urvashi Prasad. Ms. Urvashi Prasad is Director in the Office of the Vice Chairman, Niti Aayog. She has extensive experience in health, nutrition, sanitation, gender, and public policy, and has also contributed to the management of COVID-19, implementation and monitoring of sustainable development goals, and the promotion of gender equality and social inclusion. Next with us is Ms. Gayatri Das Sharma. Gayatri's professional experience over the last 26 years has been in the areas of talent and leadership development. She has worked on several organizational and people change initiatives which required her to influence and drive change both at the systemic and people level. Gayatri has been in various leadership roles and was part of the founding team of Coach in Box. Miss Anusha Bhardwaj. Anusha is the Executive Director, Voice for Girls, and Founder Director, Soch for Social Change. Voice for Girls is an NGO that strives to eliminate gender inequalities by educating and empowering marginalized adolescent girls and boys. Anusha is also an Ashoka Fellow. And with us is also Dr. Meena Gopal. Dr. Meena Gopal is Associate Professor at the Center for Women's Studies at Pondicherry University. Prior to this, she taught at the Advanced Center for Women's Studies at TIS Mumbai and at Research Center for Women's Studies in SNDT University. With an experience spanning over 2 decades, her areas of interest in research and teaching include gender and labor, bodily cultures, sexuality studies, welfare and development, and social movements. Moderating this panel is Mr. Sajid Ali. Sajid is a senior social sector professional with expertise in designing, implementing, and evaluating sustainable CSR programs in the areas of skilling, education, health, nutrition, and microfinance. Prior to being appointed as the Chief Operating Officer, he headed all the skill development and education programs implemented directly by the foundation. Sajid is also an alumnus of the Irma Anand. Over to you, Sajid.
Thanks, Nidhi. I don't see spotlight on Urvashi. Is she here?
Yes, Urvashi Ma'am is here, but she's saying that she has a bit of poor connectivity, because of which not able to switch her video.
Okay. Okay, but she's with us, right?
Yes, she's here.
Okay, all right. So thanks, Nidhi, once again, and absolute pleasure to be moderating this discussion with the panelists having a wide range of experience in different kinds of organizations, from academia to grassroots organization, and from think tank to social enterprise. So for audience, we will try to cover as much ground as we can in next 45 minutes, strict 45 minutes by the organizers. So if you have any questions, please post in Q&A box. It's right there in the tab at the bottom of your screen. And my colleague Shrotriya will help you in towards the end of he will shortlist some questions and he will throw at the panelists. So before starting with the challenges and opportunities, I think all of you heard in the first segment where Shikha and Chetan discussed about mindset and policy at organization level. But I think I'll start with you, Dr. Meena. You have been teaching a course on women and work, history of transformation. So I mean, let us try and understand and briefly take us through the history of transformation when it comes to women empowerment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, it's a privilege to be here with colleagues from Tech Mahindra, and I've witnessed to all the work. It has been fantastic listening to the work and also the participants who came and spoke about their stories. So thank you very much for this opportunity. So to answer your question, Sajid, over 100 years, if I were to cite labor historians, they would say that women had to struggle hard to get into the labor market. And that time it was, the factories, the textile factories, the jute factories of the 19th century, women had to struggle hard. But there was about 20 to 25%, in some places it was even 40% women who worked in the factories, So women did strive hard to get in. But what happens is the moment modernization steps in, the moment technology comes in, the first people to be retrenched are women. So whenever there is development, there is progress, there is growth within industry, within the labor market, women are the first to be fired. Okay, they last to be hired, but the first to be fired as well. So this is one important thing. And even today, that, the formal sector is decreasing. There is deeper informalization that's coming even within the formal sector. And when that happens, so for instance, what I mean by informalization within the formal is to speak about contracts. Like, for instance, in earlier jobs, everybody, whether it was a factory, whether it was a government job, people entered and then they continued till they retired. Today, there is no concept of retirement or pensions and all these things. The nature of the work and nature of industry has changed. So we have only contracts. So even if I'm a chartered accountant and I want to apply in a corporate job, I'll get a 4-year contract or I might get a 2-year contract. Everything is informalized. There is no permanent work security. And in this such sort of an informal environment, 80%, 90% are women workers. Because as I said, they're asked to be, hired. And when you hire in the informal economy, you hire women because, they are flexible, you can handle them, etc. So this is the other thing. When informalization comes in, women are there. And then, of course, in terms of currently workforce participation of women, and I think Mr. Chetan spoke about it being about 30%. But if you really look at the formal workforce, it's only about 15 to 20%, right? So that is the nature of workforce participation. There's a deep decline. And that is because of the fact that when we look at, and I'll finish with this point, that when we look at work itself, it is the formal, the informal, and then there is the domestic. So, Geeta Sen, a very important feminist economist, spoke about that when we talk about work, we always forget or invisibilize the domestic. The domestic never comes in. So it's productive, and then what is equal to these is productive, reproductive, and then care labor, right? So these three aspects of labor, which we learn, through labor history and labor economics, etc., tells us that only the productive is actually what is visible in the economy. The reproductive and the care is invisible. And it's there that women are mostly. So just to finish to speak of this, when you speak of paid and unpaid work, women occupy the unpaid work sector immensely. And the paid work sector is what actually gives you the work participation. So I don't know if I can maybe put some points later in Hindi because many of the participants are in Hindi. It would have been great to speak to them in Hindi, but I'll stop with this for the moment.
No, I think you have, it was a bouncer. The way you expressed women are last to be hired and first to be fired. I'm still, trying to reflect upon this, whether this is happening in any of the organization that I worked. But quickly, Urvashi, you worked in some of the great organizations like Michael and Susan Foundation, WHO, and now Niti Aayog. How do you see these changes happening, especially in context of what Dr. Meena just said?
Yeah, so I think women's participation in the workforce is, of course, a very complicated issue, and I think the numbers are obviously worrying for all of us in terms of raising that participation level, and also the informality, which is, of course, true for a large part of our workforce and men and women, but women get disproportionately affected by a lot of that informality. So I think it's a very complex issue, but it has many dimensions that we are, obviously looking at, even from a policy point of view. And that is not, not just in terms of education and skilling for women, which is obviously one part of it, but more so the enabling ecosystem that they have. We know that safety is a very big issue for women. We know public transport is a big issue. We know the flexibility or the working hours. Those are important issues. The whole maternity leave is a very big issue. And even where we have, certain legislations, policies, their implementation is a challenge. So that is something that the private sector also needs to, kind of step up on, because that there's so much that the government can do in terms of monitoring the private sector or trying to enforce regulations. But I think what would be more effective is a learning from each other approach, and having best in class examples of companies which are doing a very good job with respect to their female employees, and others trying to follow suit to emulate that. So I think obviously, whenever we come out with a legislation or policy, there's always certain unintended consequences as well. And I think it is very complex when it comes to women to try and think about all of that. You try to come out with a well-meaning policy, but often the case is that, in practice, it can have the reverse impact. We've heard from certain employers, certain people in the private sector that, okay, we feel less inclined to hire women, because we feel, oh, they'll go away on this leave, or they'll do this, or they'll do that. So I think it's a case of, yes, we can, try and be more and more thoughtful about the legislations and policies we bring out, and try to think about all the possible unintended consequences to the extent we can. But it's also about the private sector and working with them. So I think it has to be a collaborative effort. It cannot be just the government or any one particular agency which can handle this. Everybody needs to work together and also to step up.
Yeah, thanks Purvashi and Dr. Meena for setting the context. Now going deeper, Gayatri, you are a certified coach and you have worked in US and China as well. So how does the gender-based stereotypes and biases come into play and gets translated into something like gender-based roles, pay parity, pay disparity, and then lesser leadership roles for, or I would not even say roles, lesser leadership opportunities for women?
It's really interesting, Sajid, having had the opportunity to, work across different cultures. While there are some minor differences, but there are some common threads that go across countries. So it was really interesting. Even in the US, a large part of what Meena talked about in terms of the unseen and the unpaid work is actually lifted by women. And one would think, okay, the US, very empowered society, very, very forward-looking, but a large part of that burden actually falls on women. In China, it was very, very interesting. And the reason why I say that was that in the sections of society that were not as economically well off, there was more of a gender parity in terms of work done and opportunities that were available. So you would see women doing heavy lifting of, say, a bookcase. I was shocked when women were lifting a bookcase and bringing it into my house, because in India, stuff like that was only done by men. However, in the more affluent section of society, even in a place like China, the gender stereotypes absolutely kicked in. And in India, I think, all of us are aware that, women do a lot of the heavy lifting at home. And when income levels go up, and we've heard of the backward bending supply curve of labor, which in some sense we are experiencing right now, women get taken off the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, completely resonate. I mean, you said necessity is the mother of invention, but here in case of women, we see necessity is the mother of transformation also. Right? In elite society, yesterday, Dr. Meena and I were discussing that in elite society, still because of you don't have problem with their resources, with the food and with the money in the household. So women are more protected and are not allowed to go out. Whereas if you see in case of agriculture labor, it is the necessity which is compelling them to move out of the houses, and they are contributing to the family income. But yes, coming to you, Anusha, I've been following you since in my days, 13, 14 odd years now, 15 probably. You are an advocate of solidarity among women. Right. So what kind of ecosystem is required to witness the desired changes so that women can meet their aspiration and also reach their full potential?
Thank you, Sajid. Lovely to be here. Lovely to hear from your participants as well. They are so inspiring. And also amongst colleagues. Hi, Meena. It's been a while. Nice to see you. The one I want to just close on the point that's been said earlier, Sajid. One about economic empowerment of women. I think what we are consistently doing is saying, okay, we need to bring more women in, let's do livelihood skilling. And the same lens that we use for skilling men, we use for women. Yes, they'll be technically very expert of doing the work, but their challenge is not just in technical skilling. Their challenge is in negotiating at home, understanding power structures, understanding safety. We don't even want to expand our curriculum. Like I think the gender aid curriculum, you should now infuse it into all your programs when you're doing skilling, especially for women. So it's gone that we can just kill them on empowerment and then say, okay, they will. Second thing, I think coming to the point that you asked me, I would say that, we have to go beyond saying, let's motivate ourselves. Women have the mindset that we don't. Yes, I think we are being brought up not to be, to be more nurturers and nourishers and care economy. I think that's what we are brought up with. However, I think it has to go beyond motivation and our own mindset. We have to allocate resources to ensure women can continue on the path of education. So I work with girls, so we help them plan their future. They in fact have their diaries where they say 10th class I'm going to ये पढ़ने वाली हूँ, मैं 12th में ये पढ़ने वाली हूँ. This is the journey I'm going to take. But there aren't enough colleges. So then this girl comes back to me and say, I want to do diploma in IT, but the nearest college to me is 100 kilometers away. I cannot be allowed to stay. There are no residential facilities. And we have only one bus that goes in the morning and mine is an afternoon shift. What do you do? So she has all of these, but there are no resources or infrastructure. So how do we also ensure that we walk the talk and ensure that we create? In fact, I feel that government of Telangana is a good initiative because the last decade they've spent a lot on the KG to the PG scheme where they say, let's enroll, let's bring more girls into the KG, but let's also look at are they finishing PG. So when they are entering, are they actually leaving with a higher education and continuing? So they've invested in residential schools, residential hostels, residential degree colleges, which I think is again something that we need to look at if you want to have women. And the third point, I'll just leave with saying that as women, we have to ensure that we have our own cheerleaders around us. I think that's conscious decision, especially if you're a woman social entrepreneur. You need to have your own support systems that will tell you it's okay to say no. Don't feel guilty because you are holding all these roles. Unfortunately, you have to because the society demands, but it's okay for you. You don't have to be a perfect mother, perfect wife. There's nothing called perfect anywhere. So we need people to constantly remind us as we remind other women who work with us that it's okay. Or even critique our work, also consciously have people who say, well, yeah, but these are things that you can, and maybe Gayatri can spotlight on how do we have coaches in that journey as well. These are the 3 points.
Yeah. So Dr. Meena, quickly, Anusha advocates for solidarity among women. No role for men to play. What role do you see for men? Probably moderation, what I am doing today, or even that is not required?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. And hello, Anusha. I mean, Anusha actually had Voiceful Girls that participated in a project that we've done in addressing early marriage of young women in 8 states. And Telangana, as she rightly said, is it's a fitting example of support structures. But for men, I mean, I'll draw from the research itself to say that, I mean, your gender curriculum is fantastic. And iWage is also a very credible organization that has supported you in this. I think men also need training. Men need training. Men need like conscientizing, awareness building. We think only women need that. Women need, as Anusha said, skills to negotiate with family, understand power, etc. But I think men also need to, because a lot of young men are also the victims of patriarchy. Patriarch is often the senior-most, the most powerful man in the vicinity, whether it's the family or community. But a lot of young men go through a lot of tensions. And today, looking at the unemployment rates of young men, I think it's very tough for young men in today's time. So men need support, men need training, men need sort of, that empathy for, the other genders. That's very important. And for instance, one of the things that we did was, father-daughter support structures, where fathers would be trained. We'd have, many of these organizations, including Anusha's, where they work with fathers in the family, who are the prime decision makers, and tell them, how can they support their daughters? And then periodically, you don't do a one-off and leave it, but then continuously. So I think that's the only way. Education, instruction, awareness. These men should participate in that. Just to add one thing, for instance, in the university, where I was, men or senior professors, male professors would think, see, we don't need training for sexual harassment. We don't need that. It's the women who need it, the younger people who need. We're all arrived. We don't need it. But actually, because we keep our doors open and there's a lot of transparency, that's the problem. Those with power are unwilling to sort of give it up and be ready to learn, unlearn your earlier thing and learn new things. So that, I think, is the prime role that men can, take up. Thanks to you. But you're doing a wonderful job as moderator.
Thanks, Dr. Meena. At least the least we can do is let go some of the powers that we are holding to. That's something that we can do. But coming to you, Urvashi, you have been recognized one of the most influential women in healthcare year after year. And so what kind of support system you had and what does it take to reach at a leadership position where you are today?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely my parents, were clearly the biggest support system because I come from a nuclear family. So it was really my parents who, both by example, because both my parents were civil servants. So, I saw them both doing the same job, and yet, together managing household responsibilities, managing raising their, daughter. So I think a lot of what I learned was just by looking at them live their lives. But I think also in terms of obviously the opportunities that they gave to me, right from the beginning, in terms of education, in terms of, every which way. I think I never, it was one of those obviously very privileged upbringings, where I never had to face any kind of, discrimination or ever feel that I'm ever lesser than anybody else. So I think from early on, the household obviously has a very important, family has a very important role to play. But I think then much later on, even in my career, I think I've had, and that's, I think, very important, some very good, people I've worked with, and especially senior people, and a lot of them have been men, because, that's how it is. At senior levels, we do still have predominantly men, which I hope will change. Because I think we do need more women at senior levels for sure. We need a good balance. But I think I've had these, men as bosses, as, mentors. And, I think that's also played a very important role. And so I think it's men and women together, really, and in different spheres of life, who are able to, really influence the kind of opportunities somebody gets, as well as, make sure that they have a level playing field. I think that's really what any of these people did. Nobody had to do anything extra for me. And I think for, any woman, I think that's true, because women are no less in any way. But it's just that the enabling ecosystem has to be favorable, and we have to remove the additional hurdles that we often put in the way of women. So I think that's really what we need to do.
Yeah, thanks, Urvashi. I think the entire building up of ecosystem starts right at the home. So we as parents need to bring up our children in that ways where women can be accommodated and that respect is there right from day one. So from leadership to entrepreneurship, Gayatri. The other day I was talking to one of our partners in Punjab. RSED is an organization, old-time partner with foundation. And the founder, Mr. Paramjit ji, is strong and he's very passionate about women entrepreneurship. So he spoke about entrepreneurial traits, while there were many, but he stressed upon only three: creativity, patience, and discipline. Right? And he was, in his distinct style, he was explaining why women are more creative than men, why they are more patient, and with examples, right from their hairstyle, and men do not even have two hairstyles. Once a hairstyle is a lifetime a hairstyle, and women can, dress up every day in a new style. So creativity, patience, and discipline are three important traits according to him. And in all these traits, women are far ahead of men. There is no match at all, be it patience, discipline, and creativity. Yet we see only less than 5% entrepreneurs as women. So where is the gap?
Yeah. So I think very right, Sajid. Women are extremely creative, ready to take risks, right? Whether it's at home, whether it's cooking a new dish, or it's a new hairstyle, or wearing a different kind of outfit, or entering a new family, right? I mean, that I would say is the biggest leap of faith, and your ability to kind of settle in there. Patience and discipline. I think women are extremely patient because of they deal with so many different people, both at home and outside, and discipline as well. However, unfortunately, what research is telling us, the funding that goes to women is disproportionately lower than it goes to men, right? And I think a large part of that is because of some deep-rooted biases that we hold. And sometimes we ourselves, don't recognize that we hold biases. I remember I was kind of getting, into an aircraft, and at that time we didn't have that many women pilots. And when, it was announced to say, welcome, I'm your pilot. I'm going to be kind of, taking you from Delhi to Hyderabad. My co-passenger was like, oh my God, a woman is going to pilot the aircraft. And, those are biases that we don't even realize exist. So I think, one thing, as both Anusha and Meena were talking about, is becoming aware of our biases and accepting them. Because unless there is awareness, we can't correct for them. Some of the women who have been successful in their entrepreneurial ventures are, those who have really kind of been able to create a village around them, right? And, those have been saying, I need help. I don't need to do it myself. I need help. And who have been a little unabashed in terms of using their connections and using their networks. Unfortunately, as women, we form very, very deep relationships. We don't leverage our networks. And as an entrepreneur, you need to leverage your network, because every interaction is an act of influencing. And we don't use our ability to influence, which I think each woman has. She's influencing all the time at home. She's negotiating for her kids. She's negotiating, with her family. If she wants to go to college, she's negotiating because she wants to go, go into the workplace. So I think it's, we have a lot of these talents. We need to just bring them to life. And as Anusha said, we need our cheerleaders. We need that village to say, Anusha, what you're doing is totally amazing. And the way you talk about the work that you do, nobody can do it. And that's how we'll have more and more and more, successful women entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Gayatri. Nicely put together on biases. Just digressing a discussion a bit. We had a batchmate at IRMA, and the most soft-spoken girl from Kerala, who, I mean, everybody in the batch would care of. When she comes, people will give her the seat that she might faint. That kind of personality, everybody loved her. And this girl became IAS officer. She cracked UPSC and became IPS officer. And still, 10 years on her duty, whenever we have a discussion in our batch, we still used to imagine, how did Anupama become an IPS officer? So, I mean, inherent deep-rooted bias, not because of ill intentions, but we are brought up that ways. I mean, today, even I cannot imagine that Anupama is an IAS officer and doing the toughest job in this country. So yes, biases are there. And Anusha, tough call to become an entrepreneur. Gayatri also said it. According to a Harvard Business article also, women-led startups receive less than 3% of all VC investments. And this is true for our sector also. You had similar experience?
Definitely, I think even in the batch of IRMA, not too many women, I mean, there are some stalwart women batchmates from IRMA, but not as many as you can see the men, right? So, when I passed out, I'm like, I was being offered a job at NACO. NACO was just starting off, and very good pay. And it was really mental to go and join a grassroots organization in Telangana. I'm like, one, I had to take a loan to study, and then I have to repay. So I actually had to take a sector incentive scholarship from IRMA to support my journey. I mean, that you just need that. I think mental. They have no other word to describe it. You should have that deep passion, but it's not logical. I mean, when you see all your other batchmates, even now, earn more, do much more to be doing this work, because being an entrepreneur itself, doesn't matter which sector, is 48 hours and 24 hours. That's one. Second, you need to be able to fundraise, find resources, and that's a machine that has to constantly go. That takes a lot from you. And being a mother of two children, having whatever, even though my house is extremely feminist, there are household responsibilities that you can't, and I think your own expectations. Like, I'm here, I'm right now, my children have summer holidays, and the guilt of, like, I should be home with them, because every day when I leave, my 3-year-old is saying, why are you going to office? Work from here, I'll not disturb you. And to be able to, say no to her and say, no, I have to get out. And I hope that she understands that her mother's gone out to do something important, right? So to hold all of that is a difficult thing. And I think it's a constant struggle. And when Gayatri just set an example, Anusha, you're doing good work, I'm going to hold on to it, because there are days where I need that, where I'm saying, what am I doing? Why am I here? And it's a very, very tough journey. But yes, what I've learned along the way is to really, really take help. Even if it is not in my DNA, because I've been brought up in a family that expected me to be a girl. So I had to defy everything to say, no, I can do it. So I had it in me to say, like, I will have to prove it. But as my journey went along, I realized it's just like it's just not sustainable on a long run. So when my mother retired and she says, well, I can help with the children, I was like, please come home. And I'm supremely grateful for what she does. And she is my strongest support system. She'll be like, yeah, I know, I'm here. Don't worry about your children. Go and do what you have to do. And she had to struggle in a patriarchal family to find that. And she helped me. But to say, yes, I need that help. Or when my colleague, very young colleague, who says, the DNA of the organization is not to say no, Anusha, it's because you don't say no. And some of the times you should learn to say no. And learning from wherever that source comes, because as a social entrepreneur, it's like running on a treadmill that you can't get off. And it's inspiring, but I think a lot of that requires constant energy, and we must channel it consciously as women.
So, Anusha, entrepreneurship as it is, it's a challenging task. But as Gayatri said, you are doing a fantastic job and nobody can do it better than you. So thank you for inspiring us. Urvashi, before I ask you another question, you also had a short entrepreneurial stint with Every Voice. What are the challenges that you had faced? You are on mute, Urvashi.
Yeah, so I think that was really, I don't know if I would even call it entrepreneurial, but I think it was just an initiative that I wanted to take up because I was very passionate about, and I still feel that way, about telling stories from the ground. That is what that initiative was all about, because I worked a lot in urban slums across India. And I just felt that, each of the people that I was working with, or the programs that I was working on, was supporting, each of them had a very powerful story which deserved to be told, whether it was somebody who was battling tuberculosis, whether it was, there was a lady who was facing terrible social stigma, as often we have with these kind of health issues, wherein even though it was a fully treatable condition, she would say, no, I'd rather not get treated, because I don't want anyone to know that I have TB. And so how we had to work around that and make sure that, you know, she gets treated. And you know, she was also working as a domestic help somewhere. And so, you know, like, I just felt that or too often we talk of statistics, and you know, we just make people into statistics. But I thought that each one of these people had a very powerful story, and that's what I tried to bring, and that's why it was called Every Voice, Stories from the Ground. I'd still like to be able to do it, but it's just that my other work commitments, and as things moved on, I wasn't really able to keep up because I was doing it pretty much all by myself. But it's definitely something, if I can do again, I'd like to, because I still believe in the power of those stories. And I think it was resonating with a lot of people, because, you know, they had never thought of these kinds of things, you know, when we're living in a very different space, where for us, you know, if we fall sick, we just go to a doctor and it's that simple. Often we're not even thinking about, you know, how difficult it is for people from certain other backgrounds, especially for women, where I think the, you know, things like social stigma, etc., often get compounded, you know, and much worse than even for men. So I don't think, you know, I had any challenges as such, you know, in doing this. It's just that I was not able to keep up because I was doing it alongside my full-time job. And so I guess the challenge was being able to balance that and manage that. And, you know, let's see if I can get back to it again. But yeah, that was the intent.
So definitely you one day, Urushi, with the passion that you are speaking, I mean, this sector needs good storytellers. But coming to your core work now on policy side, while central and state governments are making efforts in coming up with the best of the best policies, and Shikha also spoke about it. 31 states in this country are having startup policy, and out of these 31, 26 states are having policies, startup policies for women. So government is clearly making its efforts. What gaps do you see as a public policy expert, which CSR foundations and probably NGOs can fill in? And is Niti Aayog taking any step to synchronize the efforts of the civil society organizations and CSRs?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think apart from, you know, these different programs which exist, I think what at least we're trying to do is focus on the networks, the mentoring that, you know, women can really benefit from. Also the peer-to-peer networks, because I think just being able to interact with other, you know, women entrepreneurs is also very important, and is a very important learning experience, rather than, you know, hearing it from somebody else. You know, so I think that's trying to really do. Of course, connecting women to those sources of funding and women-led enterprises to you know, get better sort of access to funding. I think that is definitely something that is a big focus. But also, I think we are actually focusing on starting, when we talk of women entrepreneurship or women-led enterprises, of really starting from the school level. So, you know, we have an initiative called the Atal Innovation Mission, wherein we're very much focusing on young girls in schools who maybe have an idea to pursue something. They might have some innovation that they want to take forward. So a disproportionate number of the enterprises that are actually coming out of our AIM ecosystem are currently women-led. And you know, it's girls and women, because, you know, often these are very young girls in schools. So we're starting right from that age, and I think that's important, because, you know, whether it's men or women, I think entrepreneurship, innovation, it's important that we teach young people about these things, and we provide them with that ecosystem that I was speaking about. You know, they might already have the brilliant ideas, but they might not know, okay, how do I take this forward? So, but I think there is a disproportionate number of women who are coming through these efforts, which I think is very encouraging. I mean, hopefully, you know, their ideas will mature, and, you know, we are trying to ensure that we take them to at least some sort of logical level. We're providing them with seed funding, etc. So I think it's a start. I mean, there's obviously a lot to do, and so, you know, the landscape of what we need to do is huge, but we've definitely made a start, I think, with this, and there's definitely a huge focus now on And I think it's also just lastly to say that a lot of the social challenges that we because we constantly keep putting out these challenges and saying, okay, these are problems in health, these are problems in education, and we need solutions, and how do we solve these? And we actually find that we do get disproportionate number of girls, even in schools, coming forward and saying, oh, I have an idea, I have something we can do. So I think women, anyway, we're getting some brilliant ideas on solving the social sector challenges in particular, which I think are huge and really important. So I think it's encouraging, but obviously there's, like I said, there's a lot of work to do in such a large and such a diverse and complex country.
Yeah. Thanks, Urvashi. I think the timekeeper is saying 5 minutes. So, but one important aspect that I wanted to touch upon, and Shikha and Chetan also briefly discussed, largely, the projects around women empowerment are designed on economic empowerment and health. But I see decision making emerging as one of the major component, which unfortunately I haven't come across any program that focuses on improving decision making abilities or creating that ecosystem. So, Dr. Meena, what are those some gentle steps that organizations can take for accommodating women, especially in decision making roles? I will not even say leadership roles, but let us start with decision making roles.
Right. So two things actually. When Shikha Sharma spoke, she actually took a lot of things that I wanted to speak about, and I was so impressed. Somebody coming with so many rich years of corporate experience, and two things she actually said, or rather, one thing she really firmly said. It is affirmative action. That is, as she said, I'm not against I'm against quotas generally, but I think affirmative action does play a role. So we should, if we find a lot of talented young women, we have to actually bring them in, and we have to actually encourage women to be part of it. So I think that's a very important, and even Urvashi said it, amongst all the other policies. So I think that's a very important thing. And as Anusha said, bring in more resources, bring in scholarships, bring in stipends. There should be a sort of incentive for people. And affirmative action is an incentive. Right now, this whole approach to affirmative action is stigmatized. Oh, ye log quota pe aa gaye. Generally, about reservations in our country, in our culture, it's that. But I think we should non-stigmatize it. We should make it look like an incentive that this is what organizations do it. And several, organization leaders, corporate leaders should actually take it up. The government should do it very firmly. The second important thing I said, and I think both Gayatri and Anusha said this about networks and cheerleaders, is solidarity. Like we should create spaces of solidarity, because oftentimes, that young woman who said, मैं work from home करती हूँ क्योंकि एक मेल स्पेस है और वहाँ मेरा अकेले रहना थोड़ा मुश्किल है, तो उनको भी लगा और मुझे भी लगा, इसलिए मैं वर्क फ्रॉम होम करती हूँ। तो क्यों ऐसा है कि लड़कियां या औरतें अकेलापन महसूस करती हैं एक संगठन में, एक ऑफिस में? हमको वहां पे लोगों के साथ एक सॉलिडारिटी लानी चाहिए, एक एकता, एक यूनिटी लानी चाहिए, और उसके लिए संदर्भ लाना चाहिए. We have to bring opportunities where they can, some clubs and different things where women are getting together, building friendships, bringing, the support system, what Anusha said. And I think this is a learning from the women's movement in India and all of South Asia and across the world as well, that women have to stand with solidarity with each other. Because patriarchy is always trying to divide us. They always, people say, I'd like to end with this by saying, people say, औरत औरत की दुश्मन है. लेकिन मुझे लगता है दुनिया में इतने जंग लड़े जा रहे हैं, उन जंग लड़ते लड़ते लोग नहीं कहते कि पुरुष पुरुष के दुश्मन है, लेकिन वही दिखता है हमको कि पुरुष ही पुरुष के दुश्मन है, इसीलिए तो जंग लड़ते जा रहे हैं. जंग की अंत ही नहीं हो रही है हमारी समाज में. तो ये जो औरत के दुश्मन है is a strategy of patriarchy to prevent solidarity and networking and friendships among women. Thank you.
Yes, nicely said. औरत की दुश्मन है has been a thing that which we have been listening. But I would say एक जंग अंदर चल रही है, गायत्री, before I move to Anusha. But you as a coach, can you give us some tips, be it a female colleague or a male colleague? We see many women in guilt mode. And I personally have experienced one of my team members is still in guilt mode, that she is lagging behind her in the career because she took a sabbatical when her first baby was born. So what kind of ecosystem is required to get these kind of, and I would say excellent performers to come out of that guilt mode?
Yeah, I think, as you were saying, Sajid, एक अंदर की जंग है और एक बाहर है, right? The internal jung is, as women, we need to be clear of the trade-offs that we are willing to make. Unfortunately, nobody can have it all. Neither can a man have it all, nor can a woman have it all. Somewhere, women are stigmatized when they kind of move from what were the traditional priorities to saying, it's okay if I spend a little less time with my family and focus on my career. So one is for women to kind of say, okay, these are the trade-offs I'm willing to make. And it's specific to each person. I don't think anything is right or anything is wrong. So that's from an internal perspective. I think from an organizational perspective, leadership support becomes very, very important. Leaders being vocal to say, and I'm also connecting this to what Meena said. I'm okay to kind of let the pendulum swing a little bit to the other side, because there's so much of correction to be done. Yes, in the short run, there will be some people who will feel it's unfair, but the pendulum will come back to the center at some point of time. And if leaders support it, then other people will start aligning behind it. So I think there is the ecosystem aspect of it. And then there is, that internal jung is, as women, that we need to do a little bit of thinking and just be okay. Nothing can be 100%. As Anusha said, there is nothing called perfect. I think they're just good decisions that we make.
So thanks, Kathy. Pendulum will definitely come to the center with the like-minded people coming together. Last question to you, Anisha. What is your message to not just women, but also men who are sitting on the fence and are ready to start their entrepreneurial journey, but something is holding back? You have already crossed that boundary.
I would say India needs entrepreneurs. I think this being in the formal economy, while it's important, I think India has such a rich innovation. We call it jugaad, but I think it's much more than that culture, and we need both men and women powerful. But really to say that we require an ecosystem where we are able to support them, not just in terms of, I motivate you to do it, but really have those, resources that we can dedicate to do that. Also ensure that, we have, as we are in the entrepreneurial journey, ensuring that the pendulum swings also in the other direction. In fact, in the social sector, 70% of the roles that are played are by women. In the social sector, but 70% of the leadership is men. While we can go out in the world and talk about SDG 5 and all of that, at home we have a lot of cleanup to do. So while we have social entrepreneurs come, please let's have that in our mind that we need to correct what's happening at home before we talk about gender equality out in the world. And create spaces like, I think, Saajhi, you've done a great job in moderating, 4 power-packed women in this panel, where you listen to us with respect and dignity and you wanted that space. I think we have to create these spaces, not just to say, okay, chalo, let's bring 2 women because we need a quota, but saying that the women have something to contribute other than just, things that are traditionally women. Okay, we have this Diwali competition, let's involve the women in Rangoli. No, let's not do that. Yeah, men also can do Rangoli, women, but also much more than that. We can contribute to defense, we can contribute to security, and also change the way we speak. Shika Sharma is not just a, famous women CEO. She is a leading CEO. Why does she have to have the tag of a woman CEO? We don't say, hey, you know what, this person is a great male CEO. Let's also shed some of it as we consciously bring. She's a leader, and let's talk of her as a leader and promote her in books all across and promote her in conversations all across, Urvashi or Shika as leaders with leading voices that people should be, and boys should listen to this as well. I just lastly end with what Meena said very beautifully. I think our problem is we don't know how to recognize feminist men because there are them and we always just bracket them, and also recognize that women uphold patriarchy because that's the system. but both of them are trapped. And as we go in our entrepreneurial journey or any journey in life, we need to recognize that there are feminist men who have to be part of our solidarity, not just women, but feminists in our journey who believe in both the sectors, in equality of both genders, as well as that women will uphold patriarchy, but we have to help them unshackle. I'll end with that.
Thanks, Shanush. I can see the sparkle in your eyes. But before my organizing team tells me to shut up, one last instance on creating spaces which not intentionally done, but example comes to my mind while Shika was also speaking about men having a drink or playing golf and where women are not accommodated. I remember a similar instance happening in our foundation where all the women were posing in a function, having those beautiful saris. They were putting hand on each other's shoulder and becoming, a train kind of this pose was there. So I just stood up and stood at right in front of all the girls. And I was part of that picture. And that picture is still now, after you said creating spaces, I thought I created myself a space for myself within that, that beautiful sari pose in a coat pant. But yes, creating a space is a responsibility for each one of us. And yeah, thank you so much, Gayatri, Anusha, Meena, and Urvashi for being with us and, speaking your heart out. Hopefully, we have been able to do justice. But yes, 45 minutes were not enough. Negotiated a lot, but the team is stubborn. They didn't allow us to stretch it up. But yes, over to you, Shrotriyo, if you have any questions for any of the panelists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sajid, and thanks to all the panelists. There are a few questions in the question answer box. I'll just mention the questions and then we can decide how to take it up. So the question is to the panelists, how did your families, including the male relatives specifically, support your career? And as women students, if somebody is coming from not so good economic background and if they want to start a career of their own, how do they do that? Do they take help from any NGO or any startups? Over to you.
Anyone, maybe Anusha, you want to take it up?
I think I can share, maybe Urvashi can talk even about the scheme. There are many, in fact, like instance, again, Government of Telangana, there is a women entrepreneur hub, like there is a innovation hub that supports entrepreneurs. There are also women entrepreneurs hub. So there are hubs like this. There are scholarships for women. There are specific categories for, say, medium and small enterprises for women to come. So if you want to do the entrepreneur journey, there is enough. So you'll have to really just mine the data and those resources. But I would say that one, I think going back to the first question of how did we get permission or support from the family, I think yes, I am privileged. I won't talk for everybody that I have a support system that makes it. But I would say that it all comes at a cost, and we must ask the same question of all the men in every panel everywhere. And so make it a regular question and have them also ask how are they able to take on their journey and be so successful career-wise, and what are the support systems they have, and then you'll know the true story of where we are at. But yes, we have to cultivate those support systems. It's not easy. And Shika Sharma had mentioned that India is lucky that we are having joint families. It comes with its share of problems as well. But yes, we can find our support systems, and the institutions also have to support. For instance, I right now have a male colleague who's had a baby and his wife works. And I really want to do everything to see if we can have a care center in our office so he can bring the child to work while his wife can go back to nursing. So I think we need to look at it. We have to broaden us. It's not just women.
Also, just to add on, Anusha, it looks like the problem is very complex, but the solutions are very simple in nature. I remember of a girl, Asma, and I think 10 years back, I wrote a small story on Asma, who was dropped out of the school. And when I went to her house and asked her parents, "Kyun drop out kara?" The response was her elder brother does not want her to go to the school after 10. So I asked, "Bhai, what is the problem was?" Then he said, "Eve teasing hota hai raaste mein, and I don't want anybody to, eve tease my own sister." Then what is the solution? Well, there is no solution. She can sit at home. बहुत पढ़ लिया. Boss, why don't you drop her to the school and come back and pick her up from the school? Yes, I can do that. A simple solution and the problem is solved instead of dropping asthma from the school. So, I mean, yes, I figure out we have made the problem quite complex.
And Sajid, if I can just add, to the second part of the question, there are fellowships, there are support programs for, students who want to study but don't have either the economic means or the support structure. So, I've been part of a fellowship called the Karam Fellowship, where, bright young girls have been taken and mentored for a period of 3 years and also given financial support. So, young girls who want to study, please go out, please look, because there are a lot of these programs that, can really be a magic ticket for a lot of us.
Thanks, Gayatri. Shrutya?
Yes, we would have ended with this, but there's an interesting question, and that's the last one. So there's somebody who is asking all the panelists and you, Sajid, whether all of you are comfortable with having a female boss.
Oh, yes, I would have loved. Chetan would not like it, but I loved the company of my female boss. Is there right on the camera?
You don't have to even say this, Ajit. If I can just butt in here, I don't know if there are any other questions.
No, that's it.
Okay. I mean, can't help myself. I know that Nidhi is waiting for the word of thanks, but I think this has been, I mean, I honestly sat through and listened to each and every word that all of you said. And I think this has been one of the most riveting discussions that we've had, in Saajhi Samajh over the years. So thank you once again, each one of you. I was reminded early on in my own journey in the sector. I mean, I personally come from born and brought up in Bihar, a family with a patriarch as the grandfather, the way that it is. And therefore, for me, after transitioning into the sector and also going to an all boys school, by the way, which in hindsight, I realized how much of an impact that it has on you. I remember Shankar Venkateshwaran, who was one of my mentors in the social sector. At that time, he was heading American India Foundation. He said something, and I think he was quoting that men have brought the world to the place that it is in today. If there is hope, it is with women. So I would want to say this and say this in all, with a lot of affirmation that I believe in that. Having had the good fortune of working with a large number of women, and seeing the kind of commitment, the kind of values, the kind of ethical ecosystem with which um, women operate out of, I think it's obvious that the pendulum needs to swing in the other direction. Let's not forget that even in the most advanced countries, till just about 50 or 60 years ago, women did not even have the right to vote. So, from that juncture to a point where, we now would want to elect more and more women leaders in powers of position, the pendulum has to swing the other way. So thank you so much, all of you. Back to you, Nidhi.
Thank you, sir. And what a wonderful, wonderful discussion. Completely changing the script of my vote of thanks here. I think I'm going out from this discussion from that sad, discouraged, why me always statement to this really encouraged person who's like, why not me, dude? So, yeah, discussions are always going to be a starting point for all the new ideas, all the change that we make. And I'm extremely, extremely grateful to all our panelists, guest of honor, speakers, the leadership team, and the organizing committee of Saajhi Samajh for taking this discussion. Gratitude to all the participants for their presence and engagement during the session, and definitely hoping to apply all the insights gained in the real life situation. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you all at our future events. Our team will drop a Google form link in the chat box. Please do share your feedback for the session. Thank you so much.